feel it coming over me.
It's just like it's just it's not like a some rural setting.
When they were.
No camera, but well, thanks very much for your patience, councillors. Ladies and gentlemen, I'll declare the meeting open. We'll start with the acknowledgement of country. The Yass Valley Council recognises the Ngunnawal people, the traditional custodians of land, water and sky. We pay our respect to the elders, past, present and future emerging leaders. We extend our respect to other Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who live in the Yass Valley local government area. The prayer. Let us be still and remember the presence of God as we commence our meeting. Let us together pray for guidance and help. Almighty God, we ask your blessing upon this council, direct and prosper our deliberations to the good and welfare of Australia. Amen. Before we go straight into the meeting proper, I have a couple of acknowledgements that I want to make myself. Presently, Ken Bell, very well known, well loved, Ngunnawal elder, passed away. Ken was pretty much a legend, widely respected. He was a loyal employee of this council for over 45 years. His selfless commitment to the Yass community and his involvement in sport, both as a player and as an administrator, was exceptional. Yass is a better place in so many ways due to the efforts of Ken Bell. On behalf of Council, I want to express our sincere condolences to Pam and the family. Next, I want to acknowledge that tonight's meeting is the last we'll be holding in this chamber. I want to acknowledge the passage of history and the many councillors past and present, and indeed the staff who have spent so many hours in this chamber deliberating on the priorities and services for the people of Yass Valley. This building was constructed to accommodate the administration of Yass Shire staff in 1982. Yass Valley has expanded quite substantially since then. We've incorporated considerable additional areas and we've had to accommodate additional challenges and more staff. This building itself came into being following the amalgamation of Yass Municipal Council and Goodra Digby Shire in 1975. So it's probably fair enough to say it's seen its day. The last thing I want to make reference to before we start the meeting is to acknowledge the long service and record my personal appreciation for the efforts of our jack of all trades, Cherie Garland. Cherie will shortly be commencing a new position at Parliament House in Canberra. She's given outstanding service to council over many years. She was a vital source of guidance to councillors, new and old. We all know that she'll be sorely missed and difficult to replace. And I know she takes with her our best wishes. Thanks to all the councillors and staff. And incidentally, today is Cherie's birthday. So I'd like to wish her a happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Okay. Do we have any apologies? We don't. Declarations of community interests and special disclosures.
Mr. Mayor, Bengo Wind Farm at 9.4. We received money from Bengo Wind Farm. The wind farms are next to our property.
Thank you, Councillor Burgess. The other?
Item 6.6, the dance school. I have a child attending that school, so I'll be leading the room.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Councillor Potter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wish to advise of an oversight at the December 2023 and April 2024 council meetings in relation to the reports for the Yass Valley Open Space Strategy. From the recommendations of the Open Space Strategy, it did not resonate with me that the land I have an interest in adjoins the open space area in Yeo Crescent. It was identified as an area to be investigated for potential disposal. On reflection, I should have declared a pecuniary interest and left the chamber without discussing or voting on the matter. I understand that my failure to declare the interest does not invalidate the decision made by council, and I apologise to council for my oversight on that one.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bott. Confirmation of the minutes have been circulated. Someone like to move the adoption of the minutes is circulated. Councillor Reid. Have a second there, Councillor Jones. Thank you. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Those against, declare the motion carried. You're all muted? None? Reports to council. 6.1 Bynalong and Downing master plans.
Mr. Mayor, happy to move that the Bynalong and Bounding master plans be adopted.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. We have a second there. Councillor Broughton. Any discussion? Any comments?
Through Mr. Mayor, I think this was a terrific demonstration of great community consultation, and it's lovely to see that looped back. We had two bites of the cherry to get this information from the community back in terms of when we first saw the submissions, and councillors made some recommendations such as keeping the playground up in Bounding instead of moving it to the rec grounds. That was going to be a bit of an issue, and just seeing these recommendations come through, adopted. I look forward to seeing the next plans underway. Our planning department is always busy with plenty of strategic work ahead of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. No further discussion. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Those against, declare the motion carried. Do you vote, Councillor Cameron?
I did, with my left hand.
Thank you, Councillor Cameron. Just didn't see.
Oh, yeah, just that way.
6.2 planning for post 34 Isabel Drive, Murray Bateman. Councillor Butler. Councillor Reid. Any discussion? I'll put the motion.
I'm
Councillor Butler.
sorry. I just wanted to say that I am really supportive of this recommendation to adopt this tonight. I just would like to see more of things like this in the area. I think it is just a perfect opportunity for businesses in the area to provide these services for the growing tourism of Murray Bateman.
Thank you, Councillor Butler. Any further discussion? I'll put the motion in. All those in favour? Those against? Declare the motion carried. 6.1 application update. 6.3, I'm sorry. Who moved that? Councillor Turner, Councillor Reid. Any discussion? I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? Declare the motion carried. 6.4 development application. 5-lot subdivision, consolidation of subdivision at 3846 Pollock Street.
Through you, Mr. Mayor.
Jones.
Thank you.
You're moving the motion, Councillor Jones?
I'm going to move an alternate. Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to move that council approves the DA with condition and accepts the variation to the minimum lot size standard for the land at 3846 Pollock Street. Yass, to facilitate the subdivision to assist with meeting the state housing targets, the objectives of council settlement strategy and local strategic planning statement for increased infill development in North Yass. And that 2, a report be prepared for council's consideration examining other sites in North Yass suitable for infill development.
Councillor Turner.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'd just like to state that it's a very frustrating position that councillors in this current day find themselves in, with a settlement strategy that is at its end of life and documentation that our LEP relies on to guide our housing strategies that date back to 2011. That was a very different time. We now have a situation where there is a housing crisis in New South Wales, and this particular development application is the first step of a process that would include a lot 5, which does a fan-like increase of around 8 blocks into the backyards of what is monstrously sized blocks in this day and age. So 2,000 square metres. Times have changed. Our situation has changed in Yass. And we have brownfield sites that need to be developed in a creative and strategic way. The infrastructure is already there in terms of the roads, in terms of the supermarkets just nearby, footpaths are already in place. I would concur that as we do these kinds of developments, we'll probably have to do lockstep, some increase in storm water. I think it's important that in the upcoming budget we relook at our funding for strategic development in Yass, because we are at the end of life in our settlement strategy, and in this kind of application, it's really showing us that we're going to have to use that permission that the state government has given back to councils to use these planning tools in order to get development done. Previously, we've had to report our percentages of how far we have gone beyond our variations, and we used to get nervous if we were going over 10%. But the state government has put that control back into council's hands, and I think part of the reason is to get the solution to the housing crisis that we're experiencing. So I support this development. I think it's a very creative first step of what will be a proposal to bring a lot 5 in play at some point. I think it's a sensible direction, and I think we've got future opportunities to plan in North Yass so that we do create a lively and dynamic place in Yass Valley, not just in Murray Bateman, but also in Yass. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Any speakers against the motion?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it wasn't a thing against. Can I just ask Councillor Jones to reread that motion again?
Absolutely. It's up on the screen now.
Sure. Oh, okay. Thank you. That's what I was missing. Thank you.
Everyone clear? Councillor Cameron.
Yeah, just through you, Mr. Mayor, just ask a question of the mover of the motion, Councillor Jones. Why is part 2 there? A report to be prepared for council's consideration examining other sites in North Yass suitable for infill development. The reason why I ask this is we are notified occasionally, like every meeting, that planning department is short of staff, and that's what you seem to be asking for them to do, take on an extra load. Whereas I would think that once this precedent is set, then I think people who have these properties in North Yass would be saying, yeah, let's try it out. Let's see how things go. I would think that it would automatically happen. I'm not sure why we're getting involved. Let the government stay out of this one.
Councillor Jones.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, happy to respond. Typically, across New South Wales, you would hope that the market would drive the solutions. That's not been the case. In fact, the take up of opportunities in Yass has been slow, but we're seeing that turn around in terms of greenfield sites. What I'd like to see is our team strategically look at this area, and the reason why is if you look at a few streets to the right, you'll see what dividing some of those lots has done in terms of creating diversity in housing that Yass doesn't have very much of, and it's in high demand. So if you're looking at, I think it was Ford Street, there's lots of smaller homes that are typically our first home buyers and our rental market there, and they're turned over regularly as people graduate to larger homes and hopefully stay in Yass Valley. But I think if there is a strategic component to this, and certainly you'll see in the budget that I'd like to introduce some money for the settlement strategy, bringing that back in, that we do need to focus on it. Otherwise, all we're going to see in Yass is greenfield sites like Murray Bateman take off, and we will neglect the part of our settlement strategy, which we have agreed to, that we're going to grow Yass to a community of 10,000. So I think it's important that we do put a focus on it, so that we are ready and we can identify areas that are ripe for this to help our community and to fast track a diversity of housing blocks in Yass, which we currently don't have a lot of.
Through you, Mr Mayor, can I make a suggestion on two that you add subject to available resources?
Through you, Mr Mayor, can I please just ask our Director for Planning, Ms Julie Costa, to just comment on the alternative motion and what that means? On planning level.
Yep.
Is that okay?
Yep.
Sorry, I just thought, like I understand the 4.6 and the variations to that, to me, that's just a different thing. So I think I just want a little bit more information on what that actually means.
Through you, Mr Mayor. So the report details the reasons for refusal, and it's based on the assessment of the 4.6 request that's been made by the applicant. There's a general principle, and from a planning perspective, it is good to see these large lots over time, you know, essentially being subdivided and to form, you know, lots that are available for smaller housing. I have for different types of housing. I'm on the record of saying that there's definitely a lack of diversity of housing within Yass Valley, and that is a problem generally, and I think that's been seen through, particularly through COVID, and as composition of households change, the housing market here hasn't changed. The way that this has been brought forward to council is to ask council to vary the minimum lot size for that particular area, and what we've detailed in the report as to why council's staff do not support the variation to the development standard. It is, in my view, a way of essentially trying to think of the right words. It is essentially a way of trying to drive a strategic outcome, but using a development application to achieve that. I don't believe that that's appropriate for to go about this particular issue. My preference as the director is to use the strategic planning framework to achieve that. However, this report is before council, and council's being asked to make a decision, and I respect the views and the decisions of council. So if council is of a view that they would prefer to approve the development application, well then I respect that. That decision of council, and we will carry out what we are requested to do by council. So, look, I think the views, my views are definitely stated within the report, but council has the opportunity to determine the development application in the way that they wish to determine it. Does that assist?
Yeah, thank you. That helps a lot. I do definitely agree with this, certainly in principle, and we definitely need more housing, and we're under a lot of pressure to deliver more housing. I just think it's important to do it the right way and to make sure we are doing it right. And I know we've had a lot of discussions about strategic development, strategic planning, and going about it like we can still have this outcome but doing a different way. And I think I do have a bit of a concern that some of the sizes that we're coming down in this, like I know the ones we've approved in the past have, because they've been a 5 or 10% variation, these ones are asking for, some of them are like a 60% variation, and to me that number is probably a little bit bigger than what I feel comfortable with making that sort of decision. But if there's a way we could do it in a different way, like I would like to see this happen and I would like to support this, I just feel like perhaps that alternate motion is not, I think I'm good. Thank you. Sorry. I know.
You were speaking against the motion, Councillor.
Yes, I just needed some more information to make that decision, but yes.
Further speakers for the motion?
Thank you,
Councillor
Councillor.
Kern?
And seconding the motion. Anyone who's ever bothered to look at the aerial map of Yass will know just how much green space there is hidden in the background of these houses throughout the whole township of Yass. Dates back to the good old-fashioned horse and buggy days. And sooner or later, there came a point in time where we actually have to look at how we open that land to
accommodation use. The simple solution in most cases in the past has been to drive a road through the middle and that provides a subdivision. That is clearly not going to work in the future. The mere fact that you have 17 neighbours, none of whom saw anything wrong with this at all, strongly suggests to me that there's a group of people there who want to do exactly the same thing. I commend Jamie and his crew on coming up with an imaginative solution. It may not fit in with the guidelines, it may not fit, and certainly doesn't with the percentage of land, but that is a product as much of the size of the original block as it is of anything else. It is a reduction of the vast blocks that they have in North Yass that could be made available for closer housing. We have to take a step somewhere along the line, and I think this is, I very rarely go against a staff recommendation because they are professionals and they're the ones who make the recommendation and they know the future of this. But we have to take a step sooner or later, and I think this is a good step to take right now.
Thank you, Councillor Tennant. Any further speakers against the motion? Speakers for the motion?
Yes, I'd like to speak against the motion. I actually support the idea. I think this is a great concept for all the reasons we've already been given. My real concern is that I share with Councillor Portman, but we're saying that we will approve something of 64% variation, and I am concerned about the impact this will have on all the decisions we've made over the last few years in terms of refusing applications where variation's been 15-20%. We've said no because of this legal obligation. I'm taking it that it's not a legal obligation. Is that correct? Through to the Director of Planning.
Sorry, Smith, which part for the legal obligation? You have to consider. Council has to consider the development application. You have to consider the terms in which you can vary the development standard. But there is a recommendation for council. Council can view it, form a different view.
Just
okay. Well,
just to add to that,
yep.
The 10% was when the department were sort of having a concurrence role in developments, and that was a bit of a guideline that they had. So now that they've moved out of that role, that's no longer there, and it's really up to council's discretion. Yes, it is a big variation, certainly more than what has historically happened under the department's control, if you like, or concurrence role. But that's been removed. That's correct, isn't it?
So I suppose further to that, if we approve this, then it basically opens up Pandora's box to some degree, because we are thinking in terms of these larger blocks in Yass. But what about when we move a little bit further out for people with 40 acres that want to subdivide and so forth? What I'm getting at is, are we moving a little bit too fast? Is there a way in which we can say, yes, we approve in principle of this, but give us a little bit more time to think about it and maybe put something through a bit different? Well, let's go for it. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor. Look, I think the motion's before council, so council's, council's got the recommendation from staff, which is the refusal. You've got the alternate motion. However, each development application is considered on its merits. There are guidelines for clause 4.6, and if necessary, they would come back before council to be considered. So really, this just, it's in the hands of the council.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I was seeking support of the alternate motion. I just think that we do need to just start acting a little bit quicker on, in cases like this. The cost of living pressures and the burdens on families and the housing crisis is real, and it's happening right now, and it's not going to ease up. So sitting on something that's just going to have to happen anyway, I think this is a great way to dip our toe in and investigate how this could play out. And like the Director for Planning and Environment said, that every DA that comes before us is judged on its own merits. So, you know, the Pandora's box, it's not just going to, we don't have to approve everything because everything's going to come a little bit different. So I'm in support of this, and I think that we do need to start acting sooner rather than later.
Thank you, Councillor Buck. Any further speakers against the motion? Wish to close the debate? Councillor Jones?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. As Chair of the Economic Development Committee, we recently reviewed the housing strategy. We were looking at affordable housing, and we came up with one recommendation for council from that. And I thank Mike for his time in doing this, because he really did put a lot of work into it. And it was review your block sizes and the next time you review your LEP. That work is a big piece of strategic work ahead of us. In the meantime, do we let something like this sit on the shelf for an indefinite amount of time, because it does take a long time for an LEP to review, and once we've done our work, we then have to wait for the state government to respond and approve? Or do we crack open not just the idea of Pandora's box, but the idea of a community box, responding to our community's needs and responding to the situation we find ourselves in, not just for Yass Valley, but for the betterment of our state as well? And we have housing targets that we need to reach. In our settlement strategy, an area just next door to this lodge is identified as potential future housing. So we're not far off in terms of where we need to be in unlocking this now. And I agree, would it be better to do this in a planning proposal? Yes. Do we have the time? Not really. Not really where we're going. Our settlement strategy does need to be reviewed. That work should be done sooner rather than later. In the meantime, let's get onto this in a way that can encourage this in our areas which are close to services, close to schools, close to shopping, close to recreation. It's all there. We've seen it in a few streets across. Let's unlock this area of Yass Valley, and let's make sure that Yass grows in lockstep with the rest of Yass Valley, not just Murray Baker. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. I'll put the motion in. All those in favour?
Which motion are we?
The alternate
The
motion.
one on the screen.
All those in favour? Those against? Councillor Cameron and Councillor Potham. Thank you, councillors. Declare the motion carried. A little bit slow off the mark there. Like you. Yes. Item 6.5, BA 240052, boundary adjustment and alterations. 8 and 10 Short Street, yes, there's a recommendation. Sorry?
Now I think we have a recommendation to defer.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Which one?
Five.
Point five.
Short Street.
Yeah. Just came through on the email.
Oh, right, I haven't seen it.
No, I just called it.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'm happy just to verbally read that while we get that up. That the consideration of development application number 240052 for a boundary adjustment between 8 and 10 Short Street, Yass, and the construction of a carport at 10 Short Street, Yass, be deferred to allow the applicant to review the information submitted with the application.
We have a seconder?
Yes.
Councillor Abbey. Discussion? Those for or against? Prepare to vote. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? Declare the motion carried. 6.6, development application, Downsville, 26 Rose Street, Marham Bay.
Just leaving the room.
Move Councillor Butler.
Short street.
Do we have a seconder?
Mr. Mayor, we have an alternative motion that I think they're trying to get up on the screen.
That's one you'll move.
For those that don't know, we've lost our Cherie. So Cherie was in charge for the last, how many years was Cherie here?
7, I think.
Yeah, just controlling all of this. So thank you for everyone that's trying very hard to work it all out.
Oh, sorry.
The alternate motions up there. Chance to read it.
All right, everyone happy? Ready to speak? Councillor Butler?
I'm happy to see. It's, being a resident of Murrum Bateman, this is a hard DA, and it's not often that we get DAs like this before us that cause a lot of disruption in the community. There's certainly a huge amount of support for this DA, and equally there has been, opposal to this DA. And I really can see so many valid points on both sides. So no matter which way this goes, there are people that are going to be upset by this decision, and that is not something that I take lightly, and it's likely not something that anybody takes lightly. I think ultimately what's happened is Dazzle Dance has identified a rare parcel of land in Murrumbateman that is zoned for what they want to achieve in the community. And that is what we need to base this on. They have shown to council that they are willing to work through a lot of the issues that have been raised, and they are happy to continue to work with council on lots of issues that are raised, mainly the traffic management. But is the traffic management Dazzle Dance's fault? It's really not. It's actually council's responsibility, because this street is zoned for mixed commercial and residential. So I don't believe that we should be discriminative of a business that wants to open in an area that is zoned for what they want to do and let other businesses operate. I understand that the traffic movement is going to be greater on Rose Street, and I do agree that it is already not in a great shape. It needs to be revised. I strongly support that there is a traffic plan of management, as I've been saying for many years now, that Rose Street needs. We have a raised pedestrian crossing that is coming, which is fantastic, but there needs to be more as the town grows. But again, that's not on Dazzle Dance to fix and solve those problems. I do believe that that's on council to fix those problems. So I do believe that we should try and all work together, and the alternate motion, I think, really captures a lot of the issues that we can work through to see this facility open up with as least disruption to the community as possible. And so I would urge you to support the alternate so that Murrumbateman community can have its dancers have a home of its own.
Thank you, Councillor Butler. Speakers against the motion? Councillor Campbell.
No question, if I may ask of the mover. I'm not quite sure what's meant here by including all proposed tree removal. What does that mean? Because from the staff's statement, they were saying that some trees could be saved if things were changed around. So I'm not clear, particularly with the yellow box trees, what's happening with them. Is this sort of saying they go, or is this sort of saying they don't go? I'm not clear. Maybe the Director of Planning can answer, but you've moved the motion, so.
I'm happy for you to respond.
For you, Mr. Mayor. For the report, which recommends refusal, talks about removal of 15 trees and then proceeds to go through the assessment of the each of the trees that have been identified.
Yeah.
So I think that the tree that's on the council road reserve, a very large gum tree, should be retained. And there's a tree on the road reserve just on the western side, I think it is, behind the building, which should be retained. And my understanding is that the applicant has indicated that yes, that tree could be retained, and that all other trees would be removed. So maybe we could just change that
To say that the yellow box stays or in the road reserve.
Yeah, the two trees in the road reserve, yeah, essentially are retained.
And the other one could be retained as well.
Yes. Yeah.
Just getting clarification.
Yeah. Do you want me? Do you need some wording? Yeah. Sure. Yeah.
The trees in the road reserve will retain.
Any speakers against the motion? Councillor Cameron?
Yeah, thanks for the clarification. It does ease my mind somewhat, Mayor. But I still have some concerns about the whole issue with the Dazzle Dance DA proposal for 26 Rose Street. And I come at it from a number of different angles. I do know there's a lot of support for Dazzle Dance, okay, and that's for the actual operation of the activity, the business. But what we're looking at here is the DA for a building site, and I'm basically thinking it's the wrong site for this particular activity. And I'm coming at it partly from my role as the person in charge of the local traffic committee. And the local traffic committee has already been getting a number of reports from the Fairley area about traffic issues, and that they are varied. And what's been mentioned so far is, and I agree with it totally, I go to the medical centre there at Murray Bateman Hub. Rose Street is a very narrow, a very tight street, and I think even with a minimum of traffic, it's not a really good, safe particular area. I think you're right, Councillor Butler, that it's not Dazzle Dance's concern in one way. It's really the problem that's been created, I think, by council in some ways, by not perhaps having a really total master plan for this particular area. Suddenly we've got a school there, suddenly we've got the Fairley development there, suddenly we've got things happening there, and it's all become a bit of a nightmare in terms of the road infrastructure, in my opinion. I don't think it's a particularly safe area. I think Rose Street, as you come close to North Street, and we've discussed this before, it's a choke point. It's a point where things seem to come together too closely, in my opinion. I think the letter from the RFS that's been presented to us or come to our attention recently, they have brought up that issue, and I think that's where a lot of parking will occur regardless. And I think we've had a speaker earlier in the day do some of the counts in regard to using the car, and I take the point that you may not use the car as much in this site compared to the rec ground, but I still think there's going to be a lot of people coming and going in that particular area. And I think, maybe I'm being selfish, that I think the local traffic committee will be getting more and more complaints about the issue of traffic there. And I don't know how we're going to basically be able to resolve it. Also, I think what we're missing here a little bit is safety. I don't think we've been talking about traffic, we've been talking about noise, mentioning all those things. What about safety? What about the safety issue with a lot of kids in the whole area moving around, a lot of traffic? Yeah, anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cameron. Speakers for the motion? Councillor Potter.
Through you, Mr Mayor, I would like to speak in support of Councillor Butler's alternative motion. I agree with your sentiments as well. This is one of those things that there's a lot of people very passionately on both sides of the fence. I suppose for me, I'm a mum. My 3 children went to Murray Bateman Preschool, so I do know that area quite well. I drove in and out of Rose Street constantly for quite a few years there. And I suppose, like when my children were young, there was just hardly anything for them to do in Murray Bateman. So I then had to ferry them to Yass, which becomes to Canberra, or Yass, which there's safety issues. You're on the Barton all the time. It's one of those things. No matter what you do and where you do, there's problems. I'd like to thank the community that really got behind Dazzle Dance, and I'd like to thank the applicant for working so openly and fluidly to try and work out how we can actually make this happen. So much support out there in the community for what you guys are doing. I got really, really loud messages, so many emails, so many people came to talk to me about this in the last few days. I'm really passionate about community and to making stuff happen where the majority of people are on board with this. So I do acknowledge that quite a few of these points in the alter motion talk to some of the issues and problems that people had, so we can try and work together for the best outcome for this. I'd like to also just bring up that the applicant also addressed that at the moment with what's happening at the rec grounds, that there is a lot of parents waiting there in cars and the kids have to wait in the cars because the rec grounds is cold and in between classes they can't go home. So they're going and sitting in the car for half an hour. So I believe that perhaps some of those traffic numbers are because it's at the rec grounds. There's also safety issues with the children using those public toilets. And I know myself, when my kids were little and went in there, there's often all sorts of things in those toilets that, I wouldn't let my children go in those toilets when they were young, to be fair. So if my children were attending that, I would sit in the car as well. In between classes, I wouldn't want them wandering around the rec grounds. So I think safety is a really important issue, and I think part of the issue of safety also comes back on the parents and the children, the ages, understanding the ages you are. There's a point where the parents need to take responsibility if they're letting their children walk or I just want to say, like, the overwhelming information that I got is a lot of people actually carpool. And I know when I lived in Murray-Bateman, I carpooled. I had a 7-seater car. And quite often I would turn up at that preschool because I wasn't working at that stage. And I had 7 kids in my car because other parents worked and stuff. And I used to just drive those kids all around Murray-Bateman. And I think there is a lot of that. And I really take on board a lot of the feedback that I received through my emails was that people are carpooling, people have siblings. So I would hope, my hope is that the congestion and the traffic issues aren't actually as bad as what they're coming across. I also would like to say that most of these emails I got were from people who were extremely respectful of the area and extremely respectful towards the residents and other people who live in this area. And I know myself, the years I spent living in Murray-Bateman, there was a lot of respect, and there's not just hoons parking up people's grass and, all the rest of it. I think it is a very respectful operation, and I think we even do that in Yass. And I think that goes a long way when you live in a small town, that you do look after your neighbours and we do make sure that the people who are living nearby aren't affected too much. And I would really impose that on all the parents to actually look after the community, because I would love to see this happen, and I think it's a really important thing for Murray-Bateman.
Thanks very much. Yeah, Coffin?
Can I just, sorry. I just wanted to quickly respond.
You'll close the mic.
Yeah. Sure.
Councillor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. At the risk of being seen as a breach in this room, it was all very easy for me up until 10 o'clock yesterday morning. My mind was very clear as to the importance of 132 children in Murray-Bateman having something that they really needed in a position where they really needed it. My mind was simply there for the children in Murray-Bateman. At 10 o'clock yesterday morning, I received an email from Richard Alley, and my concerns immediately leapt to the fore of an RFS. Murray-Bateman doesn't have the luxury of a permanent station like here, where you can formalise the parking and not have anyone going, and the prospect of a bunch of children running around when RFS are in full flight at a flight in Murray-Bateman filled me with absolute horror. I don't think it is something that is being considered, and it certainly, from what you addressed by Simon Cassidy, there was no mention that it was considered at any time, the nexus between RFS and Dazzle Dance. And it still fills me with horror. And I regret to say I would have to speak against the motion for that very purpose, unless we can somewhere along the line find an easy way for fire engines to get through a bunch of kids who are dancing.
Thank you, Councillor Tanner. Councillor Reid.
More a clarification of the letter that we received from the fireys. I'm actually in favour of what the fires were talking about. They were concerned that the entrance to the Down School would be directly opposite the fire station. And yeah, they said they support the idea of the Downs itself. And I think moving to the north is the correct way to do it to address this situation. So,
Thank you for that clarification, Councillor Reid. Okay, no further discussion?
Thank you through you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to say that I'm certainly not glossing over the fact that I fully acknowledge that this will add congestion and traffic movement issues. I don't agree with Councillor Turner saying that fire trucks are going to be trying to get through a whole heap of children. I think the children will be dropped off at the door and walk on a footpath they're not going to be on the street dancing. But however, I would like to swing it over for comment from the Director of Planning and Environment or the Director for Infrastructure and Assets. You can fight it out as to who would like Is there scope at some point in time? I do think that the time is right now to look at a close investigation on Rose Street in regards to widening the road, making it safer, putting a footpath down there that links on to North Street footpath and then down to Fairley Square. Is there a way that we can move forward from council's perspective that might be able to help address that?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So we do have the design here from Genium to put in the pedestrian crossing, so that has taken into consideration that intersection and the safety of pedestrians to bicycles and also the horses, the equestrian, also the vehicles as well. In terms of the pedestrian footpaths and the like, it would have to be considered as part of the PAMS, which is up for review again very soon. So that would be something that we could put as a consideration as part of that.
Thank you.
Okay, prepared to vote, councillors? Have no option, I'm afraid. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Those against? Councillor Turner and Councillor Cameron. Thank you, councillors. I'll declare the motion carried. Next item on the paper is item 6.7, Stronger Country Communities, round 5, Wee Jasper. Is a recommendation? So moved. Councillor Turner, Councillor. Any discussion?
Councillor Johns is on, just returned. You may want to.
It's
Sorry, what?
6.7, Stronger Country Communities. There's a recommendation that's been moved, seconded. Did you go?
Yes.
Okay, I'll put the motion in. All those in favour? Those against, declare the motion carried. 6.8, the investment report for May 2024. Recommendation. Councillor Reid. Councillor Reid. Any questions? Councillor Campbell.
Yeah, no, the comment, reading through the statement in the papers. There's one investment totaling 1 million was matured during May 24. There's been no new term deposits during the month of May, so this wasn't rolled over. Council used the proceeds to fund council operations. Having a look over the last 3 months, I think we have reduced the investments by 4 million in 3 months. And I know it's towards the end of the financial year, but investment equals income in the longer term. And as you reduce the number of investments, you reduce the income. So I sort of calculate that this is about a drop of about 10 to 15% on the investment portfolio. And I just make the comment that sometimes short-term solutions may mean longer-term problems. And I just think that we've got to be conscious of the investments and not let them slip away. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cameron. I'll ask the directors to comment.
Through you, Mr Chair. Mr Mayor, just taking into consideration that, as I mentioned, I'm pretty sure at the last meeting, the last one, the one before, that the last 3 months of the financial year, council have been very conscious of finishing some grant programs, so that needs to also be taken into consideration.
Any further questions? No, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Those against, declare the motion carried. 6.9 councillor fees. There is a recommendation. I'd like to move the recommendation. Councillor Butler, Councillor Turner. Any discussion?
Mr Mayor, happy to make a comment. An election is fast approaching, and we need to be in a position to encourage as many fresh faces as we need to the table, to bring their expertise, to bring their community spirit, to bring their energy. We're not going to do this by offering the very minimum possible on a councillor wage, or fee, I should say. It's not a wage, it's not anything to live by. I think it's important that we keep up with the increase of the 3.75%, but also I think we need to state the maximum possible because of the small calibre of this fee. For the amount of work that you do, for the interactions that you have almost 24/7, you're out in the community, you're always speaking to people, you're always on duty. And if you've ever spoken to a councillor who has retired from council and seen them, they've got a spring in their step and they're re-energised because it is a load, it is a burden. And the advent of social media, I must say, has been to the absolute detriment of every councillor's mental health and well-being in the terms of it cannot be shut down. The community can access and tag you in anything 24/7, and it is an impossible burden. And I urge councillors to do whatever you can within your own means to switch off, shut down from it, because the community does not have the right to attack 24/7. They don't have the right to attack at all. What they do have the right to do is communicate with you during business hours. And I would like to see every councillor around this room draw a line in the sand for themselves, for those that are on that particular platform, to seek help if you need it, because in the lead up to this election, it would appear that some in the community would like a scalp. Instead, I would like our community to see that this is a role to aspire to, that where you can make a difference and a change. We're not going to do that if we're going to offer the minimum, so I propose that we do offer the maximum as we have done for almost time immemorial on this councillors, as I've been part of it. Thank you.
Thanks very much, councillor. Any further discussion? No, I'll put the motion in. All those in favour? Those against, declare the motion carried. $6.10. Regional CSP Awards 2042. Councillor Turner. Seconder. Councillor Potter. Speakers?
Through Ms. Mayor, I have a question. And I apologise that I haven't given the director notice of this question ahead of time, so take it on notice if you need to. Thank you. I just wanted to check, in terms of the promotion of our areas as a collective area to visit, what kind of budget are we putting towards that? I know this is looking at, the community engagement side of things, how we're going, but collectively, do we combine any resources to do that?
You, Mr Mayor, the resources are normally staff and councillor time. Is that what you're referring to, the time that we actually spend going out to the communities?
So in terms of like community engagement, Do we pool resources to do this, or is this only on our own bat, or are there any funds that come from the state to do this?
No, this is
No,
only on our.
it's all in-house. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Python.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I just wanted to make the comment that while you can see in comparison to other councils, we have a pretty good rate of community engagement and people coming to this sort of stuff, I would love to see more. And in speaking to people out there in the community, it's one of those things that a lot of people actually don't know about this sort of stuff. And I know it was widely advertised through social media channels, it was on the website. I'd love to know ways we can make this more accessible and known to people and encourage people to come to this. And I know in my time at council, sometimes it just turns up and I'm like, oh, it's like next week. And then people have already, people I've spoken to already have commitments. So I'd love to know, just going forward into next year, if there's ways, I'd love to see Yass Valley with us, we have the biggest spike. We get the most community engagement because there's a lot of people in the community who want to be involved and have opinions. And to me, that's not necessarily overly reflected in this. And while we get a lot of engagement out there in the towns and the smaller villages, I'd love to see much more engagement from Yass, and I'd love to know what we can do, how do we reach these people, because although it is out there and I've seen a lot of advertising, I'm just not sure it's necessarily hitting the mark, or maybe we can language it differently to try and bring people in, because to me this is a conversation and I'd love to see more of the conversation, but at the same time I would say we are pretty good, and it's awesome to see the engagement of numbers that we do have. I'd just like to see us next year as number one.
Thank you, Councillor Python. It is a real challenge. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah.
I mean, I talk to people all the time, and they'll tell me they didn't know anything about it. What's the fence going up around the council chambers? And I mention things like the newspaper, the radio saying don't read the newspaper, not on social media, junk mail I throw out. No, do you want me to go and knock on your door? I've done that through election campaigns, and there's no one home. I mean, it is a huge challenge communicating with people.
Yep.
And I don't know what the answer is. You,
What the answer is either. However, I have been starting discussions with the manager of media and comms and governance about the possibility of putting a full year of calendar together about IP&R requirements, and the CSP is one of those, and so that we all know, councillors, staff and the community, when these things are coming up, and we can put these in place ahead of time. So we're having discussions, and yes, we agree, how it's the same with the community activities, how do we get that out to more people? How do we make them aware? And so that's something we're working on.
I mean, even that IP&R and CSP, what does that mean to the man in the street or the lady in the street?
Yeah.
The integrated planning and reporting requirements, which is all our operational plans, delivery.
But
program.
even that is complex. For
Doctor speak.
Mr. Mayor, as we know, we get good attendances at our villages. We get very poor attendances at Yass. I can tell you now that Goulburn and Queen are exactly the same. The larger settlements hardly get anybody. They go to their villages and smaller settlements, and there's a much more stronger attendance at those type of sessions. I think it's a sort of an urban area issue. Too many things on, too many distractions. Civic pride, as much as they used to be.
And they don't pay for what we say anyhow. That's an attitude that a lot of people have.
Can I just make a comment? Close some debate. Thank you. A community exercise in the attachments. I know it's very difficult when you're faced with 790 pages to actually go and have a read through the children's drawings throughout that document. They are absolute education. I know I'm a little bit thick and I find it terribly hard to discover the number of 28 and 29-year-olds who are attending primary school in Yass until I realised that they were working towards 2042, which is when they were going to be 28 and 29. As I say, a bit slow on the uptake. I do commend it. If you get a chance to go back, and congratulations to the staff who were involved in putting that together. There are some great ideas from those kids, and some of them echo the ideas we've already had. Some of them echo ideas that we haven't yet had. And I hope to be around when those guys reach 29. I think it's going to be an interesting world.
Thank you, Councillor Turner. I'll put the motion in. Councillors, all those in favour? Those against, declare the motion carried. Councillor Jones, I think you wanted to.
If I could do a procedural motion, thank you, to bring forward swimming pool notice of motion. Thank you.
We have a second. Thank you, Councillor Butt. Any discussion? I'll put the motion. All those in favour?
Just to bring it forward.
Sorry. So you're voting for it, Councillor Cameron?
Yeah, probably.
I'll declare the motion carried.
Busy morning.
Councillor Jones.
So this notice of motion is that Yass Valley Council redirects the 24-25 budgeted funding for the pool EOI process towards the planning process of the redevelopment of the 50-metre pool and its supporting infrastructure. And that 2, a report be presented to Council at the July meeting to address setting up a focus group to help advise Council on the redevelopment of the Olympic Yass pool and supporting infrastructure, and a Council-led future heated pool development.
I did the second that.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Second, Councillor Turner.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, sometimes you've got to do some backstroke before you can do your best freestyle. And I actually only do the backstroke. That's the only one I'm good at in the swimming pool. But I hope I'm okay on this one. Yeah, doing the freestyle. We've had a long time since we had the petition, which led to Council setting up a committee to review our Olympic pool and our need for a heated pool. In no way has the demand for a heated pool changed in any way. What Council thought it was going about was the best way to try and get any pool, any heated pool across the line in doing the EOI process. Since speaking with community members, not only the Yass Swim Club, but other community members who desperately want a community-owned heated pool, I find this is the best way to go about it. We have an Olympic swimming pool that's at its end of life. A report came to the previous council telling us that it was at its end of life. If we let this Olympic pool keep going the way it's going, there is the potential that the leak that we all know is there could be so great that it undermines the entire structure and does not allow us to do the relining of the pool, which would make it shallower in its deep end because it's got a massive deep end because it used to have a diving board. So it had to meet that requirement. If we miss that window to reline the Olympic pool, we could be in a situation where we have to replace the entirety of the pool and we miss that opportunity to refresh it for a fraction of the cost. I won't tell you how much it was going to cost us a decade ago to do it because that would make us all cry in this room. We have to listen to our community, and the recent news that the swim club has grown from 40 to 150 members with potential to grow more tells me that even with the EOI process for a 4-lane heated pool, we are not going to be in a position to adequately service our community. It's going to be a fight to get community time in that pool because remember, it was going to be in this process the potential for a build to lease option. We need to go back to the drawing boards, bring in the community, bring in the passion that they have to go for grants, to lobby federal and state members so that we can achieve aquatic centres that other communities have done using grants and leveraging their position as a growing community. Well, Yass Valley is a growing community. We've seen in our settlement strategy that we're supposed to hit 26,000 by 2036. We're not going to do that unless we're an attractive place to live. And we're not going to be looking after our community the way that we should for the vulnerable that need this infrastructure, kids that need to learn to swim, elderly that need it for post-operative and injury-related work. We need a heated pool for those reasons. Back to the main Olympic pool. If we extend the season there, we create an instant opportunity for our clubs to grow even more and for our local kids to swim and learn to swim. My kids are shocking at swimming. We've got a small window of when they'll tolerate going to that very cold pool, and then suddenly it's Christmas, we're heading to the beach, and I'm a bundle of mess, of stress, because I know that my kids don't swim the way that they could. A heated pool, and I'm not alone in that, a heated pool is an opportunity for families to confidently nurture that skill. And I think as a community, it's something that we've all identified that we need. It's not new. It's been in our community strategic plan for a while now. This is a way to get us on track and get the community in the room with us by creating that focus group.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Speakers against the motion? Councillor Campbell.
Not speaking against, it's, I'm a little bit concerned with part two. The having been involved with the heated pool committee years ago for a couple of years, 2 or 3 years, and finishing up with a recommendation to spend money on the 50-metre pool, I worry about the fact that we seem to take a long time and eventually got nowhere. I would like to have some sort of timeline for part two, maybe an interim report every 6 months on progress, and just as an idea, and just an interim report back to council if this gets through, outlining what's happening and what progress seems to be being made. Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Focus groups record their meeting notes and recommendations to council, and they're brought to council. So they meet monthly.
Right.
Their notes come to you. So that's already in the guidelines that you've endorsed for your committees, focus groups, and project steering committees. So they're every time they meet, they will be bringing back their reports for council to either note or to make a decision.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, just to I'm not quite familiar with focus groups. Are they fairly formal? Do they take minutes? Because, well, that's the problem with some of these reports, that you get minutes that don't say anything. Like that, let's have this particular item noted, and you don't know what's going on. I'm just thinking.
Recommendations. The committee makes a recommendation.
Right.
That comes to council for consideration. It's pulled out of the minutes and given to you as a recommendation. If they're simply getting some information and they've got a report for information, their decision to note the information, that's their decision, because there's nothing for council to do. So, but if they say, okay, we want council to put $1 million in the next budget or something like that for construction of or repairs to the pool,
right,
then that would definitely be pulled out of their deliberations and put directly before you as part of the minutes for you to consider that. So that works exactly the same as all the other committees.
all right.
Thank you.
Excuse me.
Councillor.
Yeah, I'd just like a bit of clarification if I could. my original thought some years ago was that we were going to build a brand new swimming pool, heated swimming pool, basically bulldoze what was there. And then along came the idea that we were, in conjunction with that, we've been talking about refurbishing the old pool, which is not heated. And then I saw the plan where we had the old pool and this small heating pool alongside it. Are we now talking about just completely getting rid of the old pool and putting a new pool in its place?
Right.
Is that,
I think we're,
I suspect in answering that question that would come as a result of investigations from our Director of Infrastructure, because while the report that said that the pool was leaking and wasn't, up to standard was presented to council many years ago, we may not know what the situation is. So I assume we're going to be refurbishing the current pool and relining it to make it a more effective pool to heat and to chlorinate, etc., and to do all those chemical-y things that they do. But if, for example, that report came back or new investigation that says that thing's completely undermined and can't be relined, then that might be a conversation for the future. Is that correct?
thank you.
okay, any further discussion?
I'll speak in support of the motion. Yass needs a heated pool like now. So it just seems like the most simple way at the moment to get it. And if we have our two speakers on board and if they put their names forward to be on the focus group, I have no doubt that this project is going to get over the line within 6 months, 12 months, whatever it is. But I think this is the way that we need to move forward, and this is what's going to get Yass Valley a heated swimming pool, that the community can use it now. We've got so much development happening all over Yass, all over Murrum Bateman. We've got a new primary school in Murrum Bateman that I know would probably love to use the heated swimming pool for their swimming as well. So I just think this is going to be the quickest and easiest way to get a result. And I would say that if we get it through, I challenge Councillor Jones to look at Murrum Bateman and see if we can also get a heated swimming pool.
Thank you, Councillor. Okay, I'll put the motion, councillors, all those in favour? Those against, declare the motion carried.
Shoulders are bowing.
Now move to 611. Integrated reporting. There is a recommendation.
Mr. Mayor, if I can jump to my feet very quickly and suggest that we adopt the recommendation with the slight alteration that the 2024-25 operational plan be adopted with a 70k adjustment for the planning department for the second half of the 24-25 budget to go towards the settlement strategy review.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Seconded, Councillor Butt.
And that to the annual ordinary rates as detailed in the table also be included in that. I think it's just important that we note that we're doing the rates at the same time as well. And items 3 and 4. Through you, Mr. Mayor, it's quite a process to get to this point, and I want to thank members of our staff and I want to thank councillors for their work. This has been quite a journey to get the budget down this far to $4.7 million net operating result before the grants and contributions. But I want to say that we're not alone. Every large rural and regional council is in similar situation to us in terms of there is so much road network to get done and not enough money in the budget to do it. Roads are our major infrastructure, it's our major asset, and it is the challenge that every council faces. We have an opportunity to grow our rate base, people contributing to the extra cash that we need in our budget if we look to our settlement strategy, if we review our documents, if we're in a position to say yes to things that we can grow us as a community. I want to put us in a position where we are knocking on the state and federal government's door to solve our extra water problems sooner rather than later. We want to be in a position where we can say, look at all the potential for housing in Yass, look at all the potential for housing in Murrumbidgee, and here's how we plan to deliver it. But we need your help. We need water from Canberra to make that happen. If we've got our planning documents in place, we've got a seat at the table. If we don't have our planning documents in place, we don't. And as much as I admire our Director of Planning and Environment, Julie Foster, and her team of
One,
The strategic planning.
team of zero
Zero
strategic planning, she can't do that alone. We need to build her team in order to do that. So I commend this recommendation to you. And before I sit down, I'm going to ask the Director of Corporate and Community Services to detail just how much across the board, including within departments such as training and promotion of Yass Valley for economic development, that we have sliced this budget, because it matters and we need to discuss it, because we don't have the budget that we had last year, and what she'll tell you tonight demonstrates that.
Okay, thank you through you, Mr. Mayor. Firstly, I'd like to acknowledge the executive management team and the leadership team, as well as the councillors. We have been through the budget since it was placed on public exhibition, and have managed to bring down our forecast deficit to 4.7 million net operating result before grants and contributions provided for capital purposes. This is not an easy task, and we have attempted to do this without affecting our service levels. And as Councillor Jones has said, savings have been trimmed or moved in all areas of council. Two of the items that Councillor Jones mentioned was the promotions have been cut by 40%, and staff training has been reduced by 50%, with only essential training being undertaken in the next financial year. This is a program that we are forecasting to move us forward. There is a lot of work to be done, and with discussions with the Office of Local Government, we have been very clear and transparent about how we are going to do this. We have purposely provided a long-term financial plan that does not have a special rate variation, a possible special rate variation in there, which is what a lot of other councils have done in their long-term financial plans, because we haven't been out to the community yet and we might not get that. So all options are on the table as we move forward. The other, for example, the materials and contracts have been increased because of CPI, and the contracted costs have just gone out over the roof. The capital expenditure has been calculated in accordance with the asset management plans, but only for essential projects. We looked at fees and charges as a way of increasing income. The fees and charges have not been thoroughly reviewed by the different teams for quite some time. And so the planning team have led the charge this time and have researched what other councils are actually charging for similar, and have increased our some of our fees to an appropriate level. We've also ensured that we're not higher, and we're still underneath, but we're getting to that point. So that's one way of increasing our income. But this is only a forecast budget, and I have to just remind everybody that we have forecasted a negative budget for a few years now, and the last couple of annual financial returns have come in on target, or very near to it, and that is what we are working very hard, the staff are to maintain. yes, we've got quite a lot in the budget of items that are not funded, that are things that we and staff would like to do and the community would like, but we just don't have the funds to do everything now. So some of the things that we've moved, that we've reduced this year, we've moved. Nothing has been deleted. It is just not being done next financial year. And it's an ongoing process that we are working with both with our financial accountants that we have on board now and as a leadership team, but all the full leadership team, including the executive. So I'll present these for your adoption.
And Councillor Hoffman.
Through you, Mr Mayor, we were just speaking about the OLG and that you guys have worked with them. Can you guys just clarify for me that they are satisfied with what you've shown them and that they don't have any concerns?
Yes, through you, Mr Mayor, that's quite correct. They have acknowledged that their role is to look at the performance management, financial performance management of each council. They've noticed that regional and rural councils are very similar in many respects, and the fact that we undertook a significant review of the exhibited budget while it was on exhibition to come up with these figures, they were appreciative of the effort that we would put in there. The caveat being that you've got to keep going. You can't just ignore this. But I point out to you that if we look at the sort of grant income and contributions that we get throughout any years, then we're in a better position, aren't we? $9 million surplus in the forecast. Now that's a forecast, we know, and we're assuming that some of the grant program, operational grants that we get will continue. It's when we put in all the wish list of grants. Now, a lot of those will come through as grant funding, and one of the issues that we've been looking at is that if they're 100% grant funded, terrific. If they're asking us to do a co-contribution, that's going to be a tough decision for council, because council's going to have to look at those grants and determine what's not going to be done to deliver or to accept that grant if it's a matching grant. So you may, in the end, apply for lots of grants, and you may, in the end, not accept all those grants because of the fact that you don't want to change your priorities. And that's a choice you'll be made when those grants come forward. So that's the situation that you're in at the present time. So as I said, this is a forecasted position for the year. There's lots of things that we're working on to improve our position, and we'll continue to do that as long as we possibly can.
Councillor Cameron.
Yeah, through you, Mr Mayor, a couple of quick questions to the Director of Corporate and Community, and on page 58 of briefing papers, I noticed that it says there a new fee has been created for informal GIPA requiring DA information pre-July 2010 at a rate of $150 per application. What was the previous fee?
Previous fee was $0.
Right.
And through you, Mr Mayor, we researched what other councils are doing, and this is what they are charging at this point in time.
Okay. The second question relates to something I've already mentioned to you. Up the top of the page, it says another $3 million will be reduced. This is under materials and contracts for a total of 6 million in 2 years. You've just mentioned that we're not cutting back on service levels. I think when you answered this question previously, you were making the point that we were only going to be doing things that got grant funding. And I think that's what you said, but I could be wrong.
Through you, Mr Mayor, what I said was that essential projects will still be undertaken,
Right.
as well as grants. So we're looking to reduce the budget by $3 million per year in the next 2 years, so that we can, the forecast budget, so that we can balance.
Okay, but it seems to me that that would mean a reduction in services.
Well, that's something that we will bring back every time we review the budget.
Thank you.
Okay, any further questions? Councillor Buck.
I have actually a long list of questions.
Yep.
And I understand that we probably won't get through them tonight, so I'm happy for you to take them on notice, but I would like for council, the executive team, to provide a formal response, because what I'm seeing in the community is the same question being asked over and over and over again. And I do believe that there is a simple answer to these questions, and I just would like for the executive team to be able to provide a formal response. So specifically, they do relate to borrowing capacity, the loans that we're taking out, how that's impacting on this current budget, how it will impact in the future. So I think the way forward is, if you're happy, I will submit those questions formally to you, and I'd ask for a formal response back that perhaps could be included in the July meeting, so that it's all transparent and across the board for those questions. The word insolvency has been going around quite a lot, and I actually had to look up what that meant, because I don't come from a financial world, so I needed to understand what that meant, and it did alarm me when I saw that word floating around, and so I'd really appreciate it if you could comment on that and the future of our council in regards to that statement. And second to that, I would just like to ask, and as Councillor Pothen, stated before, that I know that there has been a meeting that has been undertaken with OLG, and from your account that they are satisfied that this budget is okay. There was no alarm bells to them. If they did have alarm bells, and as Councillor Jones reported, there would be a repercussion at this point, that they would be asking us for extra information, which they're not doing at this point in time. So if you could provide comment on that in regards to what extra information the OLG would ask of us if there was alarm bells happening, and also just auditing of our budget. Could you just respond to how we go about internal audits or external audits of our budget? Thank you.
We'll take the meeting with the OLG. The OLG did have a meeting with the executive team. There were no alarm bells coming out of that meeting. There was no talk of an improvement notice, which is what you would get if they had concerns with your budget position. They didn't talk about any of those things. They basically were comfortable with the sorts of things that we were saying in terms of, this is not a simple problem to solve in 1 year. It's solvable over a period of time. So that's why I think if they were that concerned, we would have been talking to them about an improvement notice and what that would have included and what that would have meant for council and its services. There was none of that talk. Now, that's not to say, in the future, if we can't deliver on that improvement over a period of time. But yeah, just reassure you that was the nature of the discussion in relation to our budget and future budgets.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'll take the two questions about the audit and the insolvency and answer them in one. I have had recent discussions, and today the CEO and I were at the Audit and Risk Committee meeting as well, so that's progressing. We have the interim audit has already been undertaken, and we are scheduled for the external audit in August, so early August that will take place. The committee were provided and the auditors were provided with a draft annual financial statements as at April. And the discussions that I've had with the auditors regarding the interim audit is that, and the question of insolvency is that there are it does not raise any red flags at this point in time, and that they will keep it in the back of their mind as they go into the main audit, but there is no concerns at this point in time.
Thank you.
Councillor Cameron?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I'd just like to make a few comments. I think obvious that there has been some work done, a lot of work done to try and get the debt figure down as much as possible, a lot of work, and in lots of ways that's commendable. And it's obviously that expenditure is exceeding income, which is a basic idea with our particular budget at the moment, and it is a forecast. The one issue for me is, and this is the concern that I have, is are we trying to do too much with too little? And by that I mean, we've got a number of things on our plate. We've got the water issue as a big issue. We've got Parkwood. We've got North Murray Abatement. We've got Crago Mill. We've got big projects, and our resources are quite limited. Our resources are limited in terms of finance and staff resources as well. And there may be, as we've been told, a number of reasons for that. But I think we need to be aware of the cash flow issue, whether we are able to keep on paying all the cash that's required. I think that's a short-term issue in the coming year. We've also got to be aware of the long-term debt issue, whether that is going to be a problem that will keep on surfacing that we may have to manage and have some difficulties with. I think I was listening to a program the other day, and they were talking about the issue of some organisations having to manage vacancies. I think it was something like vacancies control. And I think we're trying to do that at the moment. That it appears to me that we're trying to say we can do pretty much the same, even though we've got vacancies, and maybe we can put somebody in here, or maybe we can just leave the position vacant for some period of time. And at the ARIC meeting today, it was announced that we're getting somebody for WHS starting on July the 1st. Now that's been, I presume, been vacant for some time.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it's been vacant for approximately 3 months.
3 months, okay. I thought it was longer than that, I must admit. But I just think that that's a worry as well. I just think that we've got to be very, very mindful of our financial situation. I know we're trying to get money for the settlement program to try and increase that, but we are not in a particularly good situation, in my view. Thank you.
Councillor Cameron. Any further discussion? I'll put the motion then. All those in favour? Those against, declare the motion carried.
I'm rolling my myself.
Retrospectively second. Apologies, I did not pick that up.
I had your name written on mine.
Oh.
Okay. 612, the Southern New South Wales Health District Planning Update. There is a recommendation. Councillor Butler, Councillor Jones. Any discussion?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Can I just thank the Mayor and our CEO for attending this meeting. A fantastic result. It's so wonderful to have a positive discussion and unsettlingly positive discussion without any resistance with a state level of health or education or the like. So it was so refreshing that after almost a decade of lobbying for many of the services that are needed in Yass, to have a yes, it's happening, we're providing it. There's $1.8 million set aside to build the infrastructure, and the rest is getting put towards services. This was the response that we had in terms of the future Mothers Hub, as they dubbed it, which will refresh the Eric Bell Centre next to the Yass Hospital and introduce a range of services that have not been offered before in Yass Valley and aren't typically offered in a rural setting of the size that we are. To that effect, members of their clinical team suggested that this was a project they were hoping they could use as a prototype to then roll out throughout the rest of New South Wales. So it is so exciting to see this project moving forward. It's also exciting to see that the clinical services plan is in action, and for the first time in a long time, we've had a more realistic look at what Yass Valley statistics really are. In the past, we've had to tap the Department of Health on the shoulder and say, actually, you're forecasting for what we've already just passed in terms of population. So it's really exciting to see them engaging with our planning department to get fresh statistics to drive that. The other terrific conversation that we had was about their needs, their future needs, and our interest in looking at, do you need greenfield site? Do you need a greenfield site for a future hospital? If that's in your planning regime, then now is the time to talk to Yass Valley Council about it, because there's only so many blocks available that will suit a hospital. For example, the old sale yards, which is 4 hectares versus the 2 hectares that the current sits on. So that was an exciting opportunity to put that in front of them. And it was great to note that the CEO had already mentioned a potential greenfield site in Yass Valley in state government planning circles. So we're actually in their field of vision, which is nice to be, but we do need to keep that momentum going. And I would like to thank our CEO for so eloquently expressing where Yass is at in terms of its population and housing, and also its funding, because I think they were certainly paying attention to the growth that you were suggesting we're about to experience and are experiencing. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Any further discussion? I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Those against, declare the motion carried. 7.1. Notice of motion. Councillor Jones.
Okay, so this is for a refund.
Councillor Abbey.
Over to you, Mr. Mayor. I was wondering if it's possible we could have a short break. And we've still got a fair bit to go, but that's.
Good suggestion, Councillor Abbey. Councillor Abbey, to adjourn for 10 minutes. Thank you.
That's it. 10 days.
Tonight.
Joy. Where's your phone? You're in that bag.
Personal comforts all restored. We'll resume.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Thank you, Councillor Abbott. Okay, we're on item 7.1.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I'll be brief. This one is just to get the information that we need to actually assess this request from the resident. In no way am I suggesting that we should approve this without information. That's why I'm calling for a report back to actual meeting. And I thought it would be prudent to collect it now, bring it to council so that the current councillors can deal with it before the August break. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Abbott. Councillor Turner. Any discussion? I'll put the motion in. All those in favour? Those against, declare the motion carried. Questions on native?
Swimming pool's done, sorry.
You have one?
On the Yass solar farm.
Yeah, I just wanted to bring this up to attention. I attended their meeting that they had, the solar farm action, sort of the residents who are around this area. And I know this is a state significant development that's coming through, but I just I thought it was important to just bring it back past everybody's eyes, just to sort of it's not something that's coming through just yet, but I feel it's important to still be having these conversations because this is right on our doorstep, and while it's an amazing thing that's going to happen, I just feel like it's way too close to the town. So I just wanted to sort of put that out there to have the conversation. So there's obviously a link on there. You can view more about it, and I assume all of you guys received an email from the Solar Farm Action Group as well. So it was just more to just let's keep the conversation going. So
Thank you very much.
thank you.
Any comments from anyone else? If not, we'll go on to 8.2, transparency in local government. There is a response.
We want to no longer respond.
There was nothing to copy and paste.
Just start right
Well, that's a shocking thing to say.
Councillor Bob.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I do really appreciate your response, and I guess that also filled in some other gaps and questions as well. I think the community is calling for transparency, and I think it is really important that the conversations be had. I know I've put a bit on my social media trying to explain things. I guess, like obviously we all represent, we all have our own political views somewhere, and we all represent communities, and we talk to a lot of people in the community. I just feel like there is quite a difference with a direct political party, and I wanted some answers around that. And I'd like to just address a question to Councillor Cameron on, I suppose, with representing the party and with bringing forth notes and questions from outside, and I guess from state and federal levels as well of a party, how that works in local government. And to me, this is also part of being transparent and having these conversations and being able to ask questions.
You sure might have to answer. No, I think that's America. Look, I would also like to say that I read the report, Chris, and I thought it was very well done. I thought it was a very good report, nice and comprehensive, covered a lot of areas. I'm just going to just go through a couple of things quickly. I think transparency is very important. We should be very aware of it all the time. I can speak about being a green and trying to make changes, etc. I just want to make the point that unlike community members, to become a representative of the Greens, and I presume it's the same with the Liberals and the Nationals and that, because there have been situations where candidates have been selected and then they've got serious problems, you do have to go through quite a lot of checks to be accepted as a candidate for the Greens. And as I said, I assume it's with the other political parties. For example, there's a lot of probity checks. I had to update my working with children check. I had to have a check whether I've ever been bankrupt or whatever. I also had to have a police check. So there's a number of things, hurdles that you go through to make sure that you're not a candidate who's going to cause a lot of problems for the particular party. And, you know, let's be honest, the independent community people don't go through such a process to get elected. I think we also have transparency in regard to our party policies. And if you go onto the Greens website, you'll find the key policies that are relevant to the national, the state, etc., but also for local councils as well. So they do have policies that are up there that people can have a look at and review. So I could make an argument, but I won't today because we're running out of time. I could make an argument that being a party member is perhaps more transparent than, say, somebody. I was given the example a few years ago that there were 3 very strong Labor Party people. Everybody knew they were Labor. That's if you knew them, but if you didn't know them, if you just saw their name, you wouldn't have known that they were a strong Labor people, and they were deputy mayors, etc. You know? So I think we're being very transparent as a party. Thank you. Thank you for the question.
Can I just ask a question as well? And thank you, Councillor Cameron, for answering that.
Oh, that's right.
And I don't want you to feel like you're being targeted, although you are the only member of a party in this room.
Yeah,
so you are targeted a little bit. But I think it's more so for me, I actually wanted to understand how it worked. So, I mean, if you have an agenda comes before you,
yeah,
and do you take that agenda to your party and then you have a roundtable discussion with all of your party and then you have to sort of make a decision between all of you and then you have to sort of support what your party wants, or can you think independently and report back to your party? That's my question.
Thanks for the question. I think that's a good question. At the local level, we're supposed to have probably a reference committee where we can talk about things. But I think that committee, if it's established, it's not really to look at the issues, it's really to give support to the candidate when they're doing their particular job. So it's more welfare rather than sort of ideologue. Yeah. So let me put it this way to you. I feel I'm probably not the strongest Green in the room, if I could put it that way. I basically have freedom to vote how I wish. For example, with the budget report that we've just been looking at, you know, I was making some arguments that were negative, but as far as I'm concerned, I had to vote for it in a positive way because I think, you know, I wouldn't know what my situation would be if I voted against the budget. You know, I don't know. It's sort of really not something I would do. Thank you.
Thank you.
At the risk of making it sound like an inquisition,
Well, I did, but
were you leaned on at all in respect to the budget?
no,
Okay, thank you.
not at all. Not at all. And as I said, I was thinking in my own mind, should I vote for the budget or against it? And I just couldn't see a way, sorry, I'm not standing. I couldn't see a way that I could vote against the budget that it was trying to do something positive. Okay?
Thank you, Councillor Cameron. We are still an open council, aren't we?
Yeah,
absolutely.
Can I ask that's a good question. I'm just curious to find out if the Greens Party offers, and do you accept any professional advice from people within the Greens Party that might be lawyers or accountants, and have they given you any advice as you come into council meetings?
that's an interesting question. I think the answer is no. I do know of somebody who was an ex-councillor who is a lawyer, and you can go to him for legal advice. at a fairly expensive rate. He's not doing it as a Greens Party member. He's got his independent business as a legal person. So the answer is
Clarifying, so he is a lawyer.
Yeah.
And he is a member of the Greens Party.
yes.
And have you sought his advice?
Yeah, but not legal advice. Okay. He makes it very clear that he is not giving legal advice.
Everyone happy? I'd just make the point that I would expect everyone that stands for local government to have an opinion politically, but not necessarily be a member of the party, but like everyone else, I'm a thinker and I think about politics a lot. Okay, we'll move on to item 8.3, question with notice. Councillor Cameron submitted the question and there is a response. Councillor Cameron?
Yeah, look, I just worry about the situation. And at the ARIC meeting today, it wasn't really brought up, was it? I must admit. And you did make a comment that you were fairly happy with the contractor. Seems to be doing a good job. So I take that in regard to what I'm going to say now. I just think that we need somebody in a permanent position, and I think we need a chief financial officer to lead an effective team that's based here. Like, I could throw some extra questions like, does the person, the contractor, does he or she work in the building? Does he or she work part-time or remotely? There's a whole lot of issues that if you've got a permanent person, they're going to be embedded into the culture of the place. They're going to know what's going on a lot more. And I'm not criticising what's been done. I'm just saying that I still think that this is an important issue. And I think with the answer to the question, I don't really see there's an answer that what are we doing next to try and get somebody in this position. I don't see the plan. I don't see next steps. And what worries me is that we stay on with a contractor when we should really be getting somebody as a CFO. And I know there's difficulties in getting them, but we should be getting someone to take on that role. Thank you. To lead an effective financial team. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cameron.
Yeah, through you, Mr Mayor, I'll just make a comment. A number of key staff roles in a lot of councils are hybrid, what we call hybrid roles. And a lot of people come to an interview and say, I'd like to work 2 days a week or 3 days a week from home and come into the office for a couple of days. So the days of having someone in the office for 5 days are just about gone. And that's one of the things with COVID. We're not too bad. We've got a few people who are doing that. Like work in the office 4 days and the fifth day they work from home. Victoria have still got 50% of their workforce working remotely, and they can't get them back to work to the office. So it's a changed landscape, and certainly the unions are supportive of that flexibility, which makes it difficult when you desperately need someone with a quick answer in the office and they're at home and actually they're not on the computer or they're not on their phone because they've been putting a load of washing out on the line or something like that. And that's the downside of that remote. I don't have to say that most of the time we haven't had that experience, but we have had the experience where a lot of people who come for a job talk about a hybrid role, that they want to work so many days a week at home and so many days in the office. And it really does make it difficult, especially in supervisory type roles, that if they're not there, it's hard to supervise staff when you're not physically in the building. So that's that's a real challenge that we've got going forward. But look,
But you're saying the situation's not too bad here.
well, for most of the staff, it's not too bad. But I can say now that nearly every person that we've tried to recruit recently have talked about working from home. Do you offer working from home as a starting point? That's almost the first question that they ask when you've gone through the interview. Just as we said, for this particular role, we put in the contractors for a 12-month period while we work out what's the best options for us. Do we go back to the market and see how see whether we can attract somebody? We do know that we're not competitive with our proximity to Canberra doesn't help us a great deal because federal government can offer exorbitant amounts of money for staff that it's a challenge. And so do we go back to the marketplace or do we look at continuing on an outsourced service? So they're the challenges that we've got to look at, and that's going to be reviewed over the next 12 months.
Through Mr. Mayor, if I can just comment that very briefly that I wouldn't say that we're not doing anything at all. In fact, with the Crago Mill precinct redevelopment, we're doing volumes to help our future attraction of staff because we will have a decent place to work that won't attract the eye of WorkSafe, that isn't riddled with asbestos and mice. So looking forward to.
You don't have to line up for the toilet.
Absolutely.
He asked me what keeps me awake at night. It's a staff member reporting us to work. Sorry, safe work these days. About a non-compliant building. Everyone happy?
Yep.
Okay, we'll go on to the next one, which is 8.4. And further question from Councillor Cameron, and there is a response. Comments, Councillor Cameron?
Yeah, just to go to this briefly. I just want to say that last year we increased our waste charges not by CPI but by a huge 19%. So we have reasons for that, and there's two reasons given. And I think in the past, the first reason about the recycling plant being burnt down in Canberra was given, but the second one I don't think was, and that's sort of emerged over the last month or two. I suppose I'm still wondering whether that's just putting money aside for a future problem that may be 3, 4, 5 years down the track. I suppose what I'm saying, two quick things, seeing we're running out of time, two quick things. One is I think we need to be doing a lot more about reducing waste in lots of different ways so that the cost of waste goes down, and therefore what we're asking people to pay goes down as well, hopefully. I also think that because of the cost of living situation, because we can, we're going to have an increase in the waste charges of approximately 3 or 4%. Maybe at some stage to indicate that we're concerned about the cost of living, maybe you have a moratorium 1 year and you don't charge. You don't do the CPI. And I know it's automatic in our thinking that we do the CPI increases, but we've had the 19% increase last year in rates, plus the fact that because of not our fault, but the revaluation of rates, people are saying, oh, my rates have gone up. Maybe sometimes you need to do a symbolic sort of gesture and say, well, we're not going to do this time, we'll just let it go and we'll do it next year.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. I believe we have spoken about remediation of our landfill responsibilities in the past. The latest.
Can I jump in? Do you mind if I jump in there? I don't disagree with you, but I don't think in the context of the 19%.
My understanding was last year when we introduced the 19%, we mentioned both of those things.
All right. Okay. Sorry.
The issue for us is that I don't want to be alarmist, but Bald Hill has a finite life. It's not going to last forever. And the way the agreement is structured is that the participating councils are responsible for its remediation. So if you don't put money away into a reserve, it's going to be a big hit on the community when you've got to come and do that remediation. So that's why a portion of that increase is specifically for having that fund to be able to deal with any remediation that which unfortunately we've all inherited, which is an old agreement which put the responsibility of remediation on the councils, despite the fact that there are non-council access to that facility as well.
Wow.
And I'm not sure how much the operators are putting aside for remediation. I suspect it's zero. Because they've got an agreement that says councils, you are responsible. So the last estimate that I heard was that that was probably originally, 20 odd years ago when it was done, was, that up to about $5 million. We're now probably triple that. So that's where you need to build up some.
There's only a small number of councils involved, isn't it?
Well, there used to be quite a number, but because of mergers, there's now 4. So you've got Hilltops, Yass Valley, Cootamundra, Gundagai, and Snowy Valleys. So there's only four councils now left. Remember, you used to have Tumbarumba, Snowy Valleys, Gundagai, Cootamundra, Bullhaven, Burwood Young, and us. So there used to be 8 members of the thing. Now it's just the 4. So it could be 5 if
the demerger
goes ahead. So that, but as I said, that's why we were increasing the rates last year to cover the cost of the recycling charges that we were made. We took the opportunity as well to look at a portion of that also going towards the fund to be able to do remediation of landfills.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, if I can ask a question to the CEO, please, of how long do you anticipate that we need to keep that, for want of a better word, levy in place to build up that war chest for remediation? And secondly, what is the timeline before the Canberra facility is operational again that we might actually be able to pull down that charge, so because we're not having the extra cost of transport?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I think the remediation charge would need to remain. You're right. If we get the new MRF over in Canberra, that would remove the huge transport costs that we incurred. I think it was $300,000 a year, which we weren't paying previously, but we are now obliged to because it goes to Sydney and Canberra. The discussion or the last discussion that we had was that they were looking at 5 years to it would take them to replace the MRF in Canberra. We've been trying to put pressure on them to say, well, look, that seems to be an exorbitant period of time. Surely you should be able to do that quicker than that. But I think part of it is that the processing equipment that they use has got to come from overseas, and the factoring that in as a delay for opening. So yeah, I think that was the last version that I'd heard.
Is there the opportunity, if we know that it's coming online at the 4 or the 5 year mark, is there opportunity for us to stockpile in any capacity in order to claw back 300K for 1 year or even 150K for 6 months if we know that the MRF is going to come back online?
I think if you do that, you've then got a quantum of material that you were getting rid of that you now you now have to, a year's worth of recycling stockpiled at our transfer stations, you're still going to end up having to cart it over to Canberra. And, instead of running a truck a week, you're probably having to run about 5 trucks a week in terms of getting that stockpiled out. It doesn't really make a great deal of sense to stockpile it to then incur another cost on increasing the rate of getting that recycling out of your landfill.
Well done.
Excuse me, I'm going, and if I can't get out, I might have to ask for help.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I regret to say I'm going to have to leave too, so I'll get
Councillor Turner.
Before Councillor Turner goes, can I ask a question of Councillor Turner? With the Indigenous Committee, the Aboriginal Committee, was there any, I was going to move a motion about getting an extra flagpole. Like maybe the issue with the flags is really that we need another flagpole. Was that discussed at all?
it is still in discussion.
What, the flagpole? Or?
The number of flagpoles that we might need to satisfy everybody.
Okay, thank you.
4, 5 and 6.
Thank you. You may go.
No, thank you.
Excuse me.
You may go.
Okay, we're moving on to 8.5. Question on notice again from Councillor Cameron in respect to the Crago Mill.
Yeah, I'll be quick. I just read out the question. The question that I asked was what amendments, changes or reductions in the Crago Mill project have council staff agreed to with the preferred contractor since the conclusion of tender negotiations in November 23. So I'm talking about what's happened afterwards and when will the community be given information to what has been agreed to. I suppose I'm going back to the closed council meeting, which took an hour and a half to discuss a number of things, whether anything's ever going to come out from there about what's happened. That's one issue. The second issue is what you've suggested down below, Chris, the changes from the selected tenure, that, they're very encapsulated, they're very brief, like superwood ceilings. I've got no idea what a superwood ceiling is. And why we're only going to retain 10%, and what's the replacement? What's being put in as well? What I'm sort of saying is, I think the community needs to be a little bit more aware of not only timelines, which is really good to hear, but also a little bit more detail about what's the eventual product is going to look like. Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Other than what was negotiated through the tender process, the last sentence covers it. We've not made any other further building changes, design changes. So it's only what came out of the tender process.
But that's the building. But surely there may have been other things that have changed, like say the landscaping or the design.
It's covered in the negotiations. There's been the commercial building is going to be done to a cold shell, which means it's not going to be fitted out. That whoever leases that building will come along and do their own fit out.
Okay.
I must admit, I'm in the same boat as you, superwood ceilings, and I'll leave that to the experts.
Yeah, I'm just saying that maybe the community needs a little bit more detail about what it's going to look like when it's finished, because you've got the diagrams and the drawings that hopefully will go around the cover up the graffiti. It may or may not come. But is it going to look like that is the question. Thank you.
I think it's fundamentally going to stay the same.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, so the contractor that we've engaged has taken the design from 80% to 100%.
Right.
So it's 20% variation that they have minor adjustments or ability to do internal works with.
All right.
So they're looking to send us the 90% design plans hopefully this week, is what we've been promised. So we haven't seen if there's any other minor adjustments that have been done internally yet ourselves. So as soon as we get that information, have a chance to review it, it'll definitely come back to the Crago Mill committee that is made up of this group here. And then we'll look to try to put it out to the community as well.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cameron. Right to the minutes of the Canberra Joint Organisation. Any recommendation?
We want to do them as a block. Move them as a block.
Happy to do the lot.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I just wanted to note that 9.4 actually has a recommendation attached to it that we might need to discuss, and I think Councillor Burgess has a conflict of interest in that, so we might want to do that one as a
We'll
standalone.
do 1 to 3. 1 to 3, someone like to move it? Councillor Abbey, Councillor Cameron. All those in favour, those against, declare the motion carried.
See you all.
So, yeah.
Yeah, you know what,
And where's your necktie?
name?
Where's your bloody necktie? You can't leave with one.
I thought you in. I don't never come the council, we're still on open council. Okay, 9.4, there's a recommendation in the report, someone move the recommendation. Councillor Butler and Councillor Potham, thank you. Any discussion? If not, I'll put the motion, all those in favour, those against, declare the motion carried. Okay. That seems to conclude the business of the meeting, councillors. Thank you for your patience. I don't know whether there's been any records broken, but it's been a very comprehensive exercise.
Well, as your last meeting, I would have expected it to be obviously, from the next meeting,